be your own personal scientist and don't be afraid to run your own little experiments on yourself, with yourself and your own stuff that you're making. And, because if it works, that's all you really care. I'm not going to publish a study, right?
Welcome to the Well with Cannabis podcast, a show dedicated to telling the life-changing stories of those who live well with cannabis, all while teaching you how to do the same. Meet your host, Emily Kyle, a registered dietitian nutritionist turned certified holistic cannabis practitioner. Emily changed her life for the better with the help of the cannabis plant, and now she is committed to helping others do the same. Tune in each week to hear heartwarming stories and gain the knowledge you need to feel connected, inspired, and supported on your own cannabis journey. Whether you're a new cannabis consumer or a lifetime lover, you'll benefit from these uplifting tales of real-life journeys that will show you how you too can live your best life well with cannabis.
Before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to share a note on potentially sensitive content. The episodes on the Well with Cannabis podcast are created for adult audiences only. We will at times cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to suicide, abuse, mental illness, sex, drugs, alcohol, psychedelics, and the obvious use of plant medicine. Explicit language may be used occasionally. Please refrain from watching or listening to the show if you're likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. The information on this show is for informational and educational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. If any of the content on this podcast has brought up anything for you, please reach out or speak to a professional or someone you trust. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Well with Cannabis podcast. I am excited to be here with our new friend, Mr. James Handyside, and he is a retired fellow who has been loving cannabis for a long time. And we are here to talk to you all about cannabis in your life. So welcome, James. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Emily.
You're living the retired life now. Is that true?
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it's funny. My career was, I've worked a lot on my own independently I had a consulting business for the last 25 years. So I didn't have a real job. So I didn't punch a clock and, go to park in a parking lot and go to a workplace. So I kind of wound it down. But then, just in late 19, I said, that's it. I'm not doing anything anymore. But now after being retired for a while, it's I'm looking around for stuff to do that might look more like work, but I'm not fortunately in need of work.
That is a beautiful thing. It allows you to pick and choose and be a little bit more selective about how you want to spend your time. So You said for 50 years you've been using cannabis, correct?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your lifelong journey with cannabis.
Well, when I was young, I mean, as we are when we're young and looking for something different to do and some fun and so on, I started using cannabis when I was 15. So that's 50 years ago. Back in those days, looking back on it now, I mean, the herb itself was much more primitive, and the whole way in which we acquired our goodies was totally under the radar, and because it was totally illegal and people were going to jail and stuff. So so it was a recreational thing. It would be like, get high with my buddies and when we didn't have anything to do and maybe have a couple of beers or whatever. But, pot was kind of always part of my life. I wouldn't say it was always as big a part of my life, kind of went in and out. It wasn't always, having a lot of cannabis involvement, but it was always there. And, I never said, well, I'm quitting this stuff. It was always kind of I couldn't find any or I couldn't get any, which was, was an issue for sure. Certainly not anymore, in Canada.
I was going to say, you must have seen so much difference in the last 50 years in the cannabis scene. How has that been, seeing that in your lifetime?
Well, yeah, it probably didn't change much, really apart from, availability did increase in the last 15 years. But even like, I would say 10 years ago, I was still going to, like a jazz musician's place. I remember this guy who was our guy. And like he basically, probably, was a musician, which doesn't make much money, and then used cannabis to sort of stay alive. But the big thing has been availability. And I guess the other thing that it strangely hasn't changed much is people's attitude. I've talked to some of my American friends too about it, and they say, "Oh, it's legal in Canada now," and it's like, things must be totally different. And they really aren't. They really aren't from my perspective anyway, as a 65-year-old dude who, I have friends for whom cannabis is part of their life still. And I have friends who don't have cannabis at all in their life. And, in my family, my parents are both gone now, but I know my mom was in the nursing home, about 6 or 7 years ago when I started to get into medical cannabis. She was actually, in her experience, was kind of what got me into medical cannabis, because she was having a lot of problems. She was in a nursing home. She wasn't ambulatory. She had Parkinson's. She had trouble sleeping. So at that point, that was like a turning point. Up until then, I'd say it was the way it always was. Get a bag from your buddy, and it was fairly consistent for 40 years, but for the last 10, 15, things have really started to change in a favorable way.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your transition from the recreational world to the medical world. If you're okay with talking about your mom and kind of how your perspective on the plant changed into that medical aspect.
Yeah, it was, when my mom, well, first of all, my mom I'd heard about medical cannabis, and I knew that it was being used for medicinal purposes. In fact, I remember I was in LA, or maybe it was San Diego, on business, and I somehow ended up in an area. It was like a business thing, but there was also like a medical offices in there, and I thought, marijuana, what's this all about? And it was like this medical marijuana office where you would go and, I guess, get assessed and then maybe also buy it there. But, at that time I thought, well, this is at the time, to be honest with you, I thought, this isn't really medical. It's just like some facade, or they're saying it's medical, but it's really just to buy pot, right? It's really honestly what I thought.
Absolutely.
Anyways, back to my mom. So my mom was having trouble sleeping and stuff. And at that time, I was looking around on the internet for things that might be able to help her. And it came upon the fact that cannabis for Parkinson's, and for her difficulty in particular, was sleeping. So we asked her physician, and he said, "Yeah, sure, I can prescribe some." So prescribed her 1-to-1 oil.
Yeah.
So half CBD and half THC, and so I was her like her medical contact or whatever. So I had to go to the website, get her certificate and her permission or whatever it was, medical certificate. Go to the website, order the drug, and it would go to her nursing home, and then the nurses would administer it. And she was like, "Wow!" She was, and so at that time, so my mom's in the nursing home, and I was like, "Well, Mom, we're going to see if we can't get some cannabis for you and see if it will help you out." It's like, "Whoa, that's interesting." Well, she was surprisingly open to it. And it wasn't that she didn't know that of course she knew. She found it once in a while, and she kind of knew, and we never talked about it. Only when she found my bag and some papers, I had to get into it with her. But that was way back when I was still living at home, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of never came up. So then we had a discussion. I said, "Yeah, Mom, I still use cannabis. I really enjoy it. Let's try this medical thing." And it really helped her sleep. It really, which is sleep is a big thing. So, really helped her sleep. And
I wanted to ask, where are you located that you had such a great doctor and a nursing home that would allow her to have that?
Yeah, we're in Southern Ontario.
You're in Canada. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
I see. I just feel like, I don't know if in the States they would allow anybody in a nursing home to take cannabis oil. And that's why I was like, what? Like, they were so eager and ready to help you. And that I was like, he has to be from somewhere else.
Well, yeah. And I honestly don't know what it would be like anywhere else, but it wasn't difficult at all.
No. And your doctor was just so like cool about it and prescribed it. That's not the typical American experience, which I find,
isn't it?
I'm so glad that was your experience and that they let her use it in the nursing home. I don't think they allow, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do. I don't know. But like, that is so nice that they were like, yes, here you go.
Yeah. And the nurse, so it was a bedtime thing. So she would get her hit at bedtime. And that was all. During the day, they wouldn't give it to her. So it was really just to help her sleep. In retrospect, helped her sleep a lot. Like, because and I thought, in retrospect, it probably would have helped her during the day too. But anyway, she was at the end of her life. It just helped her, get over the bridge and, Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm so thankful that you were able to make it a comfortable experience for her at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
did you feel like your world opened up to the medical possibilities after seeing that?
Well, yeah. So what ended up happening around that time was I hurt my shoulder. I tore my rotator cuff, and if you've ever had a bad shoulder pain, it's really maybe because it's close to your head. I don't know, but it was very bothersome, and it was really bugging me. So I thought, I gotta, So I looked into what was involved at that time to get some advice and see a physician. So I made an appointment at a clinic in a city near me, and I went into the clinic, and it turned out my interview with the doctor was much like what we're doing right now. It was over the internet.
Cool.
The doctor was sitting somewhere, I don't know where, and he asked me about what's going on, and I told him about my pain and so on. And I think he ended up prescribing, I think it was also a 1-to-1 oil.
Interesting.
THC and CBD. And then, so there at that time, what you would get is a medical certificate that you could then go to the providers of medical cannabis products. And based on what and actually, it was very loose, really, because all it really was your medical certificate would allow you to get a certain amount of cannabis per month or whatever. Okay. And then they'd worked out the equivalent. So if you got a little vial of 1-to-1, then they'd work out the equivalent and so on.
Interesting.
And then eventually, I think it was after 4 or 6 months, your certificate would run out and you would have to go back to the doctor again.
4 or 6 months.
Well, I know, it's crazy. So I tried that, and it really helped me for sleep and for pain, and for my shoulder. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. Meanwhile, it turned out, I'd been growing my own for my recreational, quote unquote, recreational THC cannabis. So I thought, I'm going to grow some CBD.
Yeah.
And so I looked around, found some seeds, and grew my first CBD plant. And then I started making my own, probably 5 or 6 years ago, and kind of continued to do with advice from people like you about how to do it, because, it's not the easiest thing to figure out. And I didn't know at that time, none of my friends were doing that kind of thing. So,
So let's talk about that transition from, I don't need to rely on a dispensary. I can actually make my own medicine at home. What did that look like for you? And please emphasize the trial and error for people, because a lot of people want it to be easy, but it's really not.
No, it's not easy. And so, and I'm still learning. Like, there's no way that I've got it all figured out. So it was did my research on what I needed to do once I had the flowers, obviously. How do you get them decarboxylated and then turned into and infused and so on? So I would work on that. And I don't think I appreciated it as much early as I do now, that you need to titrate or come up with your what your dose is with the batch that you got, because the batch is, you don't know coming out of the ground. You don't know what's in that, even though the seeds might say it should finish up, and they always give you a big range. You don't know.
10 to 20.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, what is this? 10 or 20? Big difference.
Big difference.
So yeah. So then it would be, okay, I've got a batch here, and then I would titrate and kind of, take an amount and see, and then so. That's I think is what's really important, that people don't get, because we're used to pharmaceuticals. It's like, okay, you got pain, take an ibuprofen, bingo, gone, or not. It doesn't always work, but the pills and the then those kinds of things are all, I don't even say that they're dosed consistently the same, but you don't really know what you're going to take, but you can't, people don't take a half a pill. They just take one, or maybe they take two. And so it's very different. And so I think some people, as I've talked to my friends, because they've said, well, you're having some good success. And I might even have, given them some to try. It doesn't work. Or, it's like, well, you gotta play with it for a while, and you gotta find the way that it works for you. And what combination? I mean, this is the other thing that I've been learning a lot about lately, is the combination of THC and CBD.
It is so underrated.
Yeah. No, I know. It's like, I always assumed, and partly, I didn't really know exactly, although very early on, I should have listened maybe to that first doctor that gave me my medical certificate, because he said, think of it this way: CBD for inflammation, THC for pain. And it's like, well, inflammation actually causes pain. So, anything that helps you with your inflammation is going to help you with your pain too. I know that's kind of the way I think about it now. But the fact that THC works to relieve pain without being psychoactive is kind of counterintuitive, because when people say, oh, you're taking THC for pain. Oh yeah, right. So you're high. So you never know you're so high, you don't know that you're in pain or whatever, right? Yeah. I think there is some people who have still really severe pain, I'm sure, would benefit from the psychoactive aspect of THC for their pain. Absolutely. And it helped them get through it. But anyway, so it was some of that understanding that's gotten me into a more sophisticated use of my herbs.
Yeah.
For what goes on with me,
It's a beautiful thing, though. It's a journey, a lifelong journey with cannabis, and then the more you know, the more you can tailor it to exactly what you need.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's not, and I'm a do-it-yourselfer anyway. Like I grow all my own veggies. I live on a farm.
Oh, I love that.
Not all my own veggies. I mean, I'm still buying stuff.
Yeah,
but we have a big garden. I've got hens in the barn now. They're starting to lay finally after the winter. Oh, you've got some hens too?
We've got chickens and turkeys. Started out growing a big vegetable garden, and quickly realized you just throw cannabis out there and it just fits right in.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It's a lifestyle, it's enjoyable to do all those things together.
Yeah. So that worked for me. I know, some people that wouldn't be into growing, although in Canada now it is legal for an individual to grow 4 plants.
Hey, was that not legal before?
For whatever reason. No. Growing weed, even though for years it has not been difficult to get seeds. Seeds were, and that's used to always bother me in the early days when I buy seeds online. It's like, oh yeah, right, they're going to know my address, or I'm going to get busted or something, But as it turned out, seeds kind of fell through a legal crack, and they somehow were able to sell seeds.
They just had a big court ruling here in the States that said, seeds do not contain THC, therefore cannot be regulated in that way. I believe, I don't know 100%, but they agreed with that ruling.
Yeah, well, that's good. That gives the agency and ability for individuals who are motivated and want to, to make their own medicine. I mean, pharmaceutical companies aren't going to like it, but everybody else should love it. I don't understand why anybody wouldn't think this is the right thing, or
especially if it just makes people feel better. It's so at the end of the day, it's a humanitarian thing. You want people to be out of pain. You want people to feel good. And if they can do that by growing a plant in their own garden, why wouldn't we want that for people?
Exactly. Yeah. And, so I think it's kind of, it's gotten better. Like I say, we can grow 4 plants here as an individual.
Now, Canada seems way more progressive than the States in my limited experience in working with people from Canada. How do you feel about the stigma and the stereotypes? Are those dissipating? Because you guys are years ahead of us, I would say, in terms of progress.
You know what? It's interesting. I wrote and posted on Facebook, and I looked at it in my writing app, because I don't use Facebook anymore. But I looked at it on my writing app and I read it, and that's exactly what it was about, because it was at the time when legalization happened. But even though it was legal, even some of my friends who weren't cannabis orientated were continuing to have this huge stigma and stereotype about stoners. And, it's like, okay, all these stoners, or I'm a stoner or whatever. And, a lot of those people would use alcohol quite freely. And I lost a friend to alcohol,
so sorry.
who I kind of had given up on. And I really kind of regret it's one of those things where it's shit, I should have gotten more involved in his life somehow and maybe helped him somehow. But anyways, alcohol killed him. Cannabis isn't going to kill anybody. I mean, okay. You can if you're operating machinery, that's stupid when you're really high. Right. But, I still, I'd rather have somebody driving down the road toward me on a 2-lane highway who just smoked a joint versus just drank 6 beers. I'll take the joint smoker any day.
Same. Well, and alcohol is never going to make your mother with Parkinson's feel better or sleep better.
No,
it's never going to make your shoulder feel better. It's what we allow, and why we're so okay with alcohol when cannabis is such a gift with very limited side effects. It's crazy that people still hold those beliefs so strong.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the regrettable, but those kinds of things take a long time, I guess, to go away.
Yeah. And, do you feel like you're seeing progress as we move forward?
Yeah, I do, because people are realizing the medical benefits of it. And the other thing that's happened is, it's interesting. There's been, it's kind of a joke around our area right now. Maybe it's like this in other parts of Canada, but in Ontario, you go into a small town. So here's a small town near us called Stratford. I think it's about maybe 15,000 people, or maybe, about 15,000 people. And it has 6 marijuana shops. So 6 cannabis shops. And it's got, it only has one, like in Ontario, our liquor is sold in a store that is basically a government kind of a thing. It only has 2 liquor stores, but it has 6 cannabis shops.
Interesting. Are the cannabis shops like government shops, like the alcohol then, or no? Oh,
no, they're licensed in there, but they are not run by the government. There is a government website, an Ontario government website, that you can buy cannabis and various, other things that go with it, like vaporizers or whatever. But it is run by, that one is run by the government.
Wow. That's something they don't do here in the States. That's super interesting too.
But one of the things that I remember reading about is kind of like, well, this is, one of the things that legalizing was supposed to do was reduce black market. So people wouldn't buy it from the jazz musician anymore. They would buy it from this local shop. And that has happened.
Yeah.
But apparently not as much as they would have thought. And people who look at this and say, why are there 6 of them? It's like, that's not going to last for very long. There's no way they can all stay in business. No. but the people who go and buy there are increasingly, or apparently, a lot of folks who are like me, or not like me in the sense that they haven't, don't have a fair lifetime of using it, but rather are kind of curious about it. Yeah. And what they're really interested in is more of the medical angle of it, or more of the, feel good angle, not that part of it that they maybe didn't predict. And so, like when you go in there, like the 1-to-1s are quite popular. There's 1-to-1 varieties now, as you know, and I've grown a few of them.
Nice.
And people, and so people say, well, why would you bother with that, right? Because they don't know really get high, but it makes your pain go away and you feel good. So what's wrong with that, right?
Yes. There's such a long held stigma that if you're not getting high, you're not doing it right. And for so many people, they don't want to get high, and you can still do it right. There's so many options. You don't have to get high, but if you want to get high, you can, and you can enjoy that too. Cannabis is for everybody in all ways, which is great.
Yeah. No, it's and I think people are realizing that. But to your point about stigma, I can think of one couple of some friends of mine. They're not really close friends, but we see them frequently socially, and they're like really against it and down on it. And if I would, and I kind of keep it under the radar when I'm with people like that, just because I don't want to rock the boat. But
you don't want people to judge you.
No, and I don't understand it, and I don't want to get into an argument. I don't want. It's one thing I don't want to do is ever feel like I'm trying to convince people of it. But don't judge me negatively on this, because there's too many things in the world that you can be judged negatively on. This isn't one of them.
No.
I don't think.
Definitely not.
No.
Now, do you have a spouse or a partner? Are they supportive of your cannabis use?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. My wife is occasional user of recreational mostly, although it was funny. We were having some fun the other night with our friends, and that's kind of when she would have some, and I'd given her some of my this year's THC that we were, using the packs with.
Yeah.
And she got high, and she said, I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep. And I said, well, just hold on a second. And I loaded up some CBD, and sure enough, within 20 minutes, she was like, I'm really sleepy now. Well, yeah, see you later. Right.
Exactly.
And that's something that I never, ever thought about, was that it kind of can be a little bit of an antidote. If you get, a little over the top, CBD will take the edge off.
Absolutely. And more people need to know that, because when you consume too much THC, you feel unwell. And obviously no one wants to feel unwell, but CBD can help so much. And I will actually share a personal story, because I had always heard that and I had never tried it for myself. But on Thanksgiving, I made a canna butter board, which was very strong. And I warned my sister and I warned my sister-in-law. I was like, just so you guys know, this is super strong. I don't know how strong it is because I made it myself.
Right.
Do you think anybody listened to me, including myself? So I wake up at 5:30 in the morning the next day with the baby, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't even listen to my own advice. I'm still really high. And I grabbed 2 CBD gummies, 50 milligrams each, and took them. And within like 30 minutes, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. So that is just a great tip for anybody who's nervous about using THC as well, or doesn't want to feel unwell. Like CBD really can come in as the hero at the end of the day to save you and make you feel better.
Yeah. No, it's really diversified the whole thing. Like you say, I mean, especially with edibles. I mean, we've all had experiences where, I'm going to have another one. No, you shouldn't have had another one.
Absolutely
right?
not.
The typical it's not working. I'm going to have another one. No. Wait.
Absolutely. Now, as we transition, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to ask you the same 4 questions I ask all of my guests. Are you ready?
Uh-huh.
All right. First one up. What are you most proud of in your life to date?
When I saw that question on the thing, I was like, come on, Emily, this is like too heavy, right? I was like, but I mean, there's a lot of things I'm proud of. But since my work is behind me, I won't even touch that. but I'm really proud of the farm we have, which is a 100-acre farm, and we bought it. We bought it in 1987, so we've had it for 35 years. In that time period, it's gone from, I don't know, like we had 35 acres of hardwood forest, and we're now up to 48 acres of woodland and naturalized space. So we took out a whole pile of the marginal farmland and planted thousands of trees, and like it is a park. I live in a park.
It's beautiful.
It's like I feel so fortunate to live where I do, and it's because of our dedication to restoring some natural space. So I'm proud of that.
That's amazing. And then you throw a cannabis plant or two in there as well, and you've got like a paradise out there.
Exactly. Yes.
That is awesome. Now, what do you think your life would look like without cannabis?
Well, I think that, for sure one thing would have happened, I'm going to guess, is I would have had more alcohol, which I don't think is a good thing for a lot of different reasons. But because, and my dad, I remember my dad telling me once when I was probably a teenager, and he was like, humans have a need to change their cognitive, the way they're thinking or how they're feeling in their minds. And it's like this, and his was pointing at alcohol. This is one of the reasons why we like alcohol. And I thought at the time, that's one of the reasons why I like pot, Dad. Right. But if I didn't have cannabis, I would still be altering my mind. And the only choice that I would have considered, because I was never, I tried cocaine, but only a couple of times. I would never be into other drugs, although I'm kind of increasingly interested in psychedelics, but that's another matter for another day.
Yes, absolutely. And totally not on the same playing field with any of the others.
No. But yeah, I would have used more alcohol. I would have been fatter. I would have been, I would have all those alcohol things. That's the one thing that I think, and I really think that the permission for alcohol and the allowance of alcohol to be the only really socially sanctioned until recently in Canada. I mean, it isn't really still kind of, like I say, it's not out of the woodwork yet, but, would mean that I would have had more alcohol, and that wouldn't have been good.
That's a great point. I mean, such a better quality of life at the end because you have so less side effects than alcohol with cannabis. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. No, and it's everything from your chemistry and your body chemistry with respect to carbohydrates and fats, and putting on the weight with beer and stuff.
Just so much better off.
It is. And hangovers and impairment when you're driving. I mean, I'm not saying that, getting really high and driving isn't a good idea either, but
cannabis is just so much better on so many levels. I've never done anything to embarrass myself on cannabis, but I certainly have with alcohol,
that's a good one too. Good one too. I mean,
with cannabis, I know. Time to go to bed, but alcohol, it's like, I should stay up.
I know. No, and it's terrible for your sleep.
Yes. Cannabis, I love my sleep. But I would prefer cannabis.
Precious.
Yes.
Precious.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And so good for your health too. Kind of all just rolls into one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Next question. If you could go back 10, 20, 30 years ago, give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I would give, when I thought about this, because I've done a lot of work on myself since I retired. I mean, I've always tried to improve and better myself somewhat degree, but before I retired, most of it was with respect to my work and what I was doing that way. Right. But I would suggest to myself or tell myself to work on yourself a little bit more. And, cannabis has helped me with that. But that's not the only thing. I mean, it's also work on yourself in terms of diet and, the things that you can control. but would try to work on myself a little bit more. And not to be skinny or whatever. I mean, but basically just to pay more attention to my well-being. Like I've probably been 3 years now in I would say I have a mindfulness practice. So
that's amazing. A lot of people think cannabis does the opposite, but I love that you're sharing that kind of helps with all of this.
Yeah, and I will mention that I used an app called Waking Up, which is Sam Harris, and I tried other mindfulness apps and so on, but I've been really diving into it on this app, and there's a lot of turning in myself a little bit into a contemplative. I'm a lot more aware of self-aware of the whole notion of mindfulness, and also some of the tenets of Buddhism as well. So those are all since I retired.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you, and it's nice that you can retire and have the time to focus on those things.
Well, that part-time is one of the things that's definitely needed.
Oh, so nice though. You can do things that you actually enjoy while you're retired. Enjoy your life. Brings us to our very last question. If you could be remembered for one thing in the cannabis space, what would it be?
The thing that I mentioned in the little write-up that you asked for in advance of this, which was about it's a concept that called N of me.
Yeah.
When you go into the scientific literature, one of the things to look for is what is the sample size? How big was this study run? How many people were in the study? And also maybe some of the characteristics of the way they were selected and various other things. As you know, I don't think you have a science background, nutrition. If you go into the literature, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the term they use is the N. So the N in this study was 467 recruited subjects were in this thing, and it's like what I think is important for all of us is to use on the concept. I'm calling it N of me. So it's not. It's you're the only one. You are the subject of this experiment. You're the one who's controlling it. You're the one who has to collect the data. You're the one who has to get up in the morning and assess your sleep. Was this better? How much better was it? How many times did I wake up? All those other things, that sleep as an example. So if you're the scientist for N of me, it's you. And you're the only one that really has to be convinced of it. You don't have to convince anybody else that it works. If you're a personal scientist, then you're in control. You're the one who decides whether or not this is working or not, and don't let anybody else tell you that if it isn't working. And some people say, well, because I have a lot of friends in the medical world, because that's kind of where I worked. I wasn't a clinician, but I worked there. And one friend of mine has a lot of trouble with migraines, and has a lot. And she's like, well, I looked into this CBD thing, and there's no evidence that CBD works. And it's like, I don't know what studies you've been reading and so on, but I sort of think I just immediately because I'm not an advocate for my friends or anybody really. I mean, you got to come around to it yourself or you don't. I mean, I'm not here to save. So to your point about what would you want to be remembered by is like, be your own personal scientist and don't be afraid to run your own little experiments. And some things, I think cannabis is a really good example of it, that the research that's going on now, and that will probably look back in 10 years and say, there'll be a lot more, quote unquote, accepted, randomized controlled trials or whatever the medical people are going to need to buy that it works. And it's easy to run a randomized controlled trial with this stuff. So I would imagine this is starting to happen. But the other thing is that a placebo, even if a placebo works, who cares? So I don't even care. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious about the mechanism, and that's one of the things that I've read a great deal about and continue to sort of have an appetite for is what's the mechanism of action for the way in which cannabinoids are providing their efficacy in our bodies. But you don't need to even go through all that if you run a good experiment on yourself, with yourself and your own stuff that you're making. And, because if it works, that's all you really care. I'm not going to publish a study, right?
Oh my gosh, everything you're saying is so true, so spot on. I hope everybody is listening and absorbing, because you are 100% right. It is an experiment. It's unique to you, and you're the only one who can read the data and change things moving forward.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for
you're the funder and the researcher, yes, and the subject, right?
Absolutely. And it's okay to do those things. So many of us, are afraid to trust ourselves, but you are the scientist of your own self and your own body. And you couldn't have said it any better. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience, and giving that to our readers, because I feel like that is the best message to take home.
I agree.
Oh, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Emily. Thanks for inviting me.
Congratulations. You've finished another episode of the Well with Cannabis podcast and are one step closer to discovering how you too can live well with cannabis. Thank you for listening in today. We hope this episode has been a helpful and informative one. Please visit emilykylenutrition.com for more information on today's show notes, guest information, recipes, and other resources. If you want more support and encouragement on your cannabis journey, please consider joining the private Well with Cannabis community. In this group, you can connect with like-minded individuals focused on improving their health and wellness through cannabis. Join the group today to continue your journey of wellness together at emilykylenutrition.com.